Hello, hello, and welcome to Limitless Talks. This is a podcast on limitless leadership and how experience becomes a growth lever in the boardroom. I am your host, Camila Ferreira, an award winning CX leader, an author of Long Live CX, and an international speaker. Today, we're going to be talking about BPO, how to sell BPO in 2026, and how we combine human with AI to win. And my guest is Paul Smith. Paul is a sales and marketing expert with decades of experience across both BPO and technology companies. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you here. Please take the online stage, introduce yourself, and let the audience know how you transform experience into business growth. You are on mute.
Unmute myself.
Now we can hear you.
Oh, there it is. Oh, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I have an interesting background. I started in the technology space and was there for quite a while, more years than I'd like to say in public. Um, then as a result of that, I got into the what I thought at the time was a lead generation business, but I realized it was this BPO industry, and so I got involved in that. So I owned a BPO for 8 years, without any understanding of how the market worked, and so I took my technology background and I applied it, and we had some really good success in that BPO. Today, what I'm doing today is, in the interim, I've worked for BPOs as a CRO and a VP of Sales and Marketing, and learned about the operations of how a traditional BPO works. And I realized that what they were doing were very different than what I was doing when I had my BPO, because my BPO was based on a technology presentation format, right? So the way I looked at the business was the way I would do it in technology. Got into the BPO world and realized there was a real disconnect there. In that, BPOs were talking about cost and humans and not really talking about solutions and outcomes, and they weren't talking to the people who make decisions on those sort of things. So I got together with a friend of mine, Amanda Quinn, and now we have an organization called Quinn Growth Advisors. And I let her have the name because she's a younger and she's a woman. So I said, you can have the name. Um, but what we
Great
do
choice.
is, yes, yes, yes. So what we do is we work with companies who have realized that there's a need to transition. So transition from the old model of BPOs that were based on cost and FTEs to a model that's more focused on outcomes and benefits to the client and helping them meet their strategic goals.
Wow.
We're finding that there's a group of BPO operators and new people coming into the space that understand that. For the BPOs that have been in the market for a while, however, making that transition is not clear to them.
It's a huge
And
transformation.
it's a big transformation. And it's similar to transformations. Luckily for me, I went through a similar transformation in the tech world when it went from licensed software to SaaS, because
Oh,
it
yes,
changed the whole business model, right? And
totally.
and it also changed the the um the way you were reviewed, right? And the way you had to manage your customer. You went away from, I remember when I first started, it was always like, well, they bought the software. I don't know how they're going to use it, but I don't really care because they paid me and now they
Yes.
have it, right? And they never used it. And I know in some cases the customer never used the software. They never got to the point that they bought it for. So they made a $300,000 investment and sitting on a shelf. And as the vendor, I had no real motivation to make them use the software, right? Because you already bought it, and I have other customers that are using, and I can use those as references. SaaS changed that. Suddenly, it
Oh,
was you had to
upside
prove
down.
yourself. Yes, right. So you had to prove yourself every day, um, so that your customers would stay, and also you had to manage your investors who were saying, why is it that I'm only getting $50 a month from this customer? And previously I got $400,000 from him in one big chunk. So it was
Yeah.
really a very similar transition to what this market is going through now. And I also went from on-prem software to internet-based software, SaaS, just the environment.
Oh,
So
yes.
so the transition is very similar, and so I'm comfortable talking about it. So we help our customers figure out, as you're making the transition to using technology, how do you present that to your customer? Um,
Wow, I can wait for that conversation. You have so
yeah,
much experience. And something that is stood out to me is that you had been both sides on
right,
your own BPO, on how you deliver, but now advising others. And along the way, as you were mentioning, the industry was also changing and changing in a pace that is faster than ever before. So
right,
transformation nowadays, it's not something that we have on the shelf. It's something
right,
that we are living and breathing, because every day that we wake up, there is something different, and we need to understand if it's just kind of a trend that does not necessarily needs to be followed, or something that is coming to actually change how we operate and how we adapt to that. So
right,
yeah, there's
right.
a lot for us to
Yeah,
unpack
yeah,
today.
yes, there is.
I
So
I have come
so
up
that's
with a
okay.
few
Go ahead.
questions,
Okay.
but before that, I want to invite the audience to be part of this conversation as well. So if you are watching us live through either LinkedIn, YouTube, or Instagram, feel free to join us, ask questions, make your comments. Um, I'm going to bring them on the screen so we can have a very live and engaging conversation.
Good.
So, Paul, you were mentioning how BPOs operate, and mostly now that as with your company, how you help them transition from this kind of a cost orientation to a solution provider. And I think that for many years, actually for decades, BPOs were kind of a selling cost savings. And
Right.
of course, that by doing this, they were kind of put in a place where the conversations were very much limited to cost savings, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, based on what you have been observing in your clients, what is fundamentally changing in the way outsourcing services must be positioned today?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is the conversation has gone from cost to outcomes. What is the benefit that you're providing to my organization? That's one. What makes you special? Right? So if I'm in a certain industry, what do you know about my industry and the operation and how my industry works so that you can be of some value to me as we go forward? Um, the other thing is, um, are you future proof? Here's one of the issues that I think a lot of BPOs are running into. In their rush to become a tech enabled, uh, they've been burned because the tech side of that is in flux. And so they invest in an organization and then the organization goes away because the competition in those spaces are so high right now that they go away. So I think what customers are looking for now is, how are you going to provide me the outcomes? How much input can you help me with making this transition to AI being part of my mix? And are you looking at the future and making the right decisions on the partners that you use or the technology that you're building, so that as the market moves, I'm going to stay current?
Yeah. And there is something, Paul, that we were discussing just before coming live, which is people will see what we kind of show them. So if we as BPOs, we present ourselves as cost savings only, that's
Mm-hmm.
how we're going to be seeing from our clients. But if we present ourselves as business partners, as kind of a solutions driven, then the conversation changes. So it's really important that we don't wait on clients to approach us in a different perspective, but we as BPOs, we start approaching and presenting ourselves to the market in a completely different way, where we are not going to be limited to cost savings anymore. We can do a lot more, but only if we can become truly business partners.
Right, exactly. And like we were talking about before, the role has kind of changed. So now we need to go in as consultants. We
Oh,
understand your market, we understand your vertical, we understand the operational requirements. And as a consultant, we're going to help you figure out how to maximize your resources and provide your customers the best service you can. Oh, by
yes.
the way, we also have the people to implement that. So the people aren't the focus of the conversation. They are an enablement tool that you have as a consultant to say, I have a special ability to not only give you good, great ideas, but also provide you with the people who can implement those things and the
Absolutely.
technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of people and technology, so Donna has just kind of a message here that AI is cheaper, but not so personal. And one of the questions I have for you is that nowadays, many people think that AI will replace human agents. This is just this sentence would give us the entire kind of a topic for a podcast. But
Right.
the way I see, and I'm sure you share this vision as well, is that it's not one or the other, but actually the combination of
Yes.
humans with AI. So, in your view, based on your experience and how you are supporting your clients nowadays, how do we balance humans with AI as an operating model?
I think that I think that part of it is we let the customer determine to a degree. So so yes, AI is not going to provide. If my son swallowed a nickel and I need to talk to someone about what do I do about it, or do I need to take a bot is not what you want to talk to, right? If my tire blows and I'm in the middle of the desert, I don't want to talk to a bot. I want to talk to a person to get my problem fixed. So I don't think AI is going to replace um, humans, because there is that certain there are those situations that require humans. However, AI can do a lot of the redundant work that we ask our reps to do now. Simple example for people in the contact center. You know, the after work used to be something we computed in when timing, right? It's like, okay, so the call takes this much and then there's the after work and that takes X amount of time. In today's world with the QA systems that we have, there is no after work. The after work is being done by the technology. So you didn't get rid of the human, but you got rid of some of those menial tasks that you've asked your agents to do in the past, and they don't have to do those anymore.
Yeah, so in my view, Paul, AI makes humans actually stronger because if I don't have to kind of invest or better said, waste time on operational tasks, but I can actually add the best of my wisdom to the business, to the conversation, to the client. Because imagine nowadays, so in the area of BPOs, I do remember when I was still in corporate, and even before that, kind of years ago, dealing with support, the amount of tasks that an agent, a frontline
Yeah.
agent, had to do, and the amount of time. And I remember us kind of accounting how much time, how we could make that kind of a support more efficient. Nowadays, those tasks can definitely be streamlined and done by AI, whereas you have your agent better engaging on a human side
Right.
with
Yes.
your client
Yes.
and
Yes.
providing a lot more insights. So I agree with
Yeah.
you. It's not a matter of one or the other. I don't
Right.
think that at least in the short term AI will replace.
No.
Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, but I don't think
Right.
at
Right.
least for the short term you're
Yes.
going to see kind of a
I think there'll always be a place, and just to not to drive this conversation too far, but one of the things is as you offload some of those menial tasks, your agents become more focused on the things that matter. So they understand the customer's products better. They understand how to answer certain questions better. In time, the value of those people will increase. So where you're losing on, sure, you may not have as many agents asking first level questions in an e-commerce environment, but you're going to be able to pay a designer who sits down with the customer and says, based on your body type and your, you know, your complexion and all that, this is what I suggest that you buy for yourself because you'll look good in this. That's a higher level person, and you can charge more for that person. So I think it's an offset over time.
Absolutely. And there is a comment here from Adam. Let me put this on the screen because he's saying AI is cheaper for a one or two back and forth conversation, but anything more than that, longer conversations, it's probably the same cost and less personal.
Um, I think, you know, and I think Adam's statement makes is has a lot of truth to it. But what I'm finding is we need to be a step ahead. And I had an interesting experience with Expedia. I'm one of those people that does use chat and all that. However, with travel, I tend to want to talk to somebody. And I had an interaction with Expedia the other day where I never talked to anybody, and it was very empathetic. It took care of my problem from top to bottom. I never talked to a person, and I had a great result. However, my wife would never do the same thing. She would call. And
Interesting.
so what I'm saying there is we have to understand the audience, right? There's every voice is still the number one channel that people use for help. So yeah, there's always going to be that set of people who like to talk. My kids, my daughter's always online. My son wants to talk to somebody. So I think that empathy is dependent on the receiver,
Of
right?
course.
I don't empathy doesn't matter to me. You know, I don't really care if you have empathy. My wife really does want a lot of empathy. So what I say is we have to give the customer the ability to decide how they want to interact with us and provide the tools to allow them to do that.
Absolutely. We got to move away from this one size fits all.
Yeah.
And in some kind of researches, I also see us trying to bucket the generations into preferences,
Right.
which is not necessarily true, as you were saying. So, your daughter, your son, your wife. So, again, if we put all of them in just in the same bag, we will just frustrate some of them. I think,
Right.
as you
Right.
correctly said, is what are the tools that we have available? How do we offer those tools in a very seamlessly way, allowing individuals? Because at the end of the day, again, I am the kind of a chat person. You were the phone person. We too are Expedia customers in that particular situation. So if I have to call, this will most likely frustrate me because I don't want to kind of be on a call with someone. But if you
Right.
have to
Right.
chat, you may not do it because, again, your
Yeah.
preference is phone. So
Right.
it's Expedia or company's responsibility to offer the different channels, allowing their customers to choose their preference and not the other way around. And in
Yeah.
speaking of industry transformation, I think this is a very significant transformation because in the past, it was the push model.
Right.
Oh, we designed this way. That's the only way for you to get
Right.
in contact with
Yes.
us. You name it, phone, email, chat, whatever.
Right.
And clients used to have to accommodate to the channels offered. Nowadays, it's the opposite. And
Right.
regardless of the generation, companies must offer different channels, and then their clients will decide which one fits them the best.
Right. Right. And so to Adam's point, I will say this. My experience is that the cost of resolution for uh, for more and more complex things is lower with AI. So as we look at it today, it's at a certain place, but it's moved a lot in the last year, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you know, last year when I hadn't thought I worked through it, this year I go to Claude, I put it in, it gives me some ideas, and I go from there. That's been in 1 year. So we
Yes.
have to expect that that's going to continue. However, there are always going to be the people who want that personal touch, and you can't do and AI can't do that yet. But
Yes,
what we
even
tell
if
our
you
customers, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, no.
Okay,
So
no.
even today with the kind of LLMs platforms, you need a human behind it. Of course, it's improving at a faster pace. As you said, as you were saying, a year ago, our experience with LLM platforms was completely different than it is nowadays. But
Totally.
it's still we need a human behind
Yes,
it.
yes, 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 you do. And LLMs will become, what I foresee is that LLMs will become more verticalized and more verticalized over time. And as they do, AI will be able to deal with more situations. But this concept that that's going to mean the end of the BPO, if you're not using technology and you're doing everything by hand, yes, it's going to replace you.
Yes.
If
Oh,
you integrate,
absolutely.
right, so I as long as BPOs are forward thinking and strategic, they have a very important place. If you're not, the pressure on you is going to be greater than it used to be.
Speaking of that, because you were saying that you help BPOs with that transformation of going from being cost driven only to become a solution partner, what are the most kind of a frequent mistakes you see BPOs making in that transition, particularly when they do not have your support?
Um, yeah, good point. Um, I think here's a couple things. I think that here's what I see a lot. The BPO industry has had technology shifts over that 30-year period that they've really been prevalent. However, the shifts that they've made is to accelerate or improve the performance of an agent. So when you look at a CCAS system, right, it's so that the agent has more information when they pick up the phone, and that you can put all the information in one place. But it's all empowered agents. So every one of those evolutions has brought with it the need for people. AI is a different world. AI is replacing people in many cases. In many cases, it's not just um, assisting the agent, it's replacing certain types of agents.
Sure.
And you have to understand that that's a reality. And so you have to start looking at, does my business model that was based on FTEs work in this new world? It is are the things that I'm tracking or the things that I'm charging for, are they the right things for where the market's going when I have this human tech interaction? Um, Another thing is trying to cut back on the work. I'll say, um, when I went from technology to BPO, I spent 2 years buried in learning how BPOs worked because I had never worked in a BPO before. And so
Mhm.
that was an investment that I made. What I see a lot of times is the investment's not being made. It's not, you're not really understanding the problem. You're just trying to throw a solution at it and say, this will fix it. And it's like, no, this is a foundational change that you need to make. And you need to look at all of the impacts it has. How does it impact operations? How does it impact your marketing and your sales? I don't think in many cases there's a deep enough look. It's more of, well, I've done this before, so I can do it again. It's like, no, this problem is a little bit different. Um,
Yeah.
and the last thing is that there's this rush to be tech enabled. So I want to be tech enabled. So what do? I
AI,
go out.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So I go out and I signed all these partners, and I give my reps 1 hour of training, no background on what this human plus technology looks like. What does it look like? Give me an example of one. We don't give them that. And we say, okay, go out and sell technology. And oh, by the way, it's going to cut down your income. And I still want you to be motivated to do it. All those things, it's a complete system change. And I think what we suggest to people, hey, it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful at the beginning, but if you don't suffer that pain, you're never going to get to the result that you're looking for.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying, of course, is not limited to BPOs. When we see kind of our organizations rushing for AI, not necessarily for solving their customer needs or untapping other opportunities, but just for the sake of having AI. I
Yeah.
have the other day, I have given a workshop about this on how we get ready for this. AI may not be the answer.
Right.
Of course, that AI brings a lot of efficiencies and solutions and integrations. We are living. I think that we are just kind of a tiptoeing the AI world. So it
Yeah.
definitely came to stay, but it doesn't mean that everything will be solved through AI.
Right. Right. Right.
And even if the solution is AI, what is the foundation you need to have in place to get the best of that investment?
Right.
Because when I see leaders kind of rushing for checking the AI box, I see them kind of leaving behind not having documented processes, for
Right.
example,
Yeah.
not having a kind of a clear change management program in
Right.
place for the organization.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, when we are having this conversation about the impact of AI on the labor market. If you are kind of in the lower levels of the organization and you hear that the company or your organization is implementing AI, it's quite natural that you start thinking about losing your job,
Right, right, right. Where, how is that going to impact me negatively? Because it's rarely
right?
put in a positive. Like you never hear, hey, we're going to implement AI so our employees are more productive. What you hear is we're going to implement AI and it's going to replace our employees. That's the
Absolutely.
message. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And moreover, Paul, what I see is sometimes there is no message whatsoever of
Right.
the
Yeah,
why.
yes, yes, yes.
Oh, we're going to deploy this new agentic AI or we're going to deploy this new artificial intelligence solution. Okay, but why?
Right,
And
right,
the other thing is we got to remember, particularly in BPOs, frontliners, they play such an important and valuable role because they
hmm
are the frontliners. They
Yeah,
are the
they are the
ones
face. Yeah,
engaging with those clients
yeah.
on a daily basis. Who else across the organization knows more than they do in terms
Right.
of the feelings, the sentiments? Even if you have now introduced AI to map those things, they are the ones on the phone, on the chat, kind of
Right.
live
Well, and
engagement with the
and when you
clients.
talk about bifurcation, right? When you say you have to be relevant to the person you're talking to, right? So if I like to talk to a person, I want to talk to a person. Well, you know what? Those conversations you're having with people should dictate what you're building in your AI that's talking to the people that like chat, right? So the people who are on the phone are like, "Whoa, I never had this question before." Um,
Yes.
and and we have an answer to it now. So let's make sure that our chat version has the answers to those same kind of questions. Make sure the LLM has the answer. So it's kind of a they kind of work in tandem because without one or the other, you're going to lose some context, and the agent's going to provide you some context that you might not get from the AI.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just kind of, by listening to you, it came to mind about the mistakes that I see companies making, which is not being fully ready for not only AI, but any kind of a system upgrade, not necessarily knowing the problem they are
That
trying to
they're
solve.
trying to solve.
Everything should start with a
Right.
problem statement.
Yes. Now here's what I will say too. Here's my other gotcha with the space. Is coming from the technology world, because of my technology background, one of the things I know is most systems that have value to people today had value to people before AI came on board, right? So your workforce management system worked to improve your workforce management before they integrated AI into it. So let's stop talking. When we talk about technology, it's like the conversation's always about AI. And I say, you know what? There's a lot of technologies that have high value to help your customers meet their goals that have nothing to do with AI. They're not, your CRM doesn't need AI to be effective for you, right? Your work, your workforce management system, sure, there's things it can do by incorporating AI, but if you rip the AI out of that, it still has immense value. And for certain problems, it's the right tool. It has nothing to do with AI. And I think we've somehow or other made technology and AI mean the same thing, and it's not the same
It's
thing.
not. And I would add, Paul, the process re-engineering, because sometimes the solution is not even on technology, but
Right.
on your
Yes.
process, right? So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
why it's so relevant that you have a clear understanding of your problem. What
Right.
are you
Exactly.
trying to solve?
Yeah.
And once you
Exactly.
understand that, you work backwards to see, okay, what are the tools that I have available to address that problem? Is it technology? Among technology, what kind of technology?
What
Is
kind
it
of
AI, not
technology?
AI? Or
Yeah.
is this something kind of the way my process was originally designed that nowadays doesn't work anymore because so many things around this process have also changed that we also need to change this process. Sometimes the investment is much lower than a new
Yes.
AI platform, and you are
Yes.
spending thousands and
Right.
hundreds of
Right.
dollars
Yes. Yes.
on something
Yeah.
that your solution is already
Yeah.
in-house.
And I got to tell you, and I don't want to, but to give you an example, I sold a workflow management product for about 5 years, and when you're going in and you're getting people to use workflow management for the first time, you look at all their processes,
Yes.
and in almost at least 98% of the time, the biggest value they got out of implementing the workflow management product was the process changes that they made. Because as you're automating it, you're thinking, well, why do you do that? Well, because we've always done that. It's like, well, what value? It has no value. Well, why do you do it? So take it out of the process. And we definitely spent more time improving people's processes than we did implementing the software.
Wow. Look at this. And how much, I would say, how much change management is needed throughout this process.
Yes.
Bringing people along, explaining them the why. Because otherwise, whenever you are silent, whenever you
Mhm.
say nothing, you leave such a big room for
Yes.
interpretation, for
Yes.
assumptions. And
Yes.
those assumptions, most of the time, are the wrong ones.
Right.
But if
And
you
they're
don't say a
trumpeted
word,
by, yes. And you know what? And those assumptions are trumpeted and they become fact.
oh, totally, totally.
Right.
Whenever you
Yeah.
don't say a word, so you leave a room for others to come up with their own.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Lots of
Yeah.
lots of kind of insights here. As I was saying
Yeah.
before, those are the mistakes companies make whenever they're not working with you, because whenever they
Right.
do, it's a completely different experience.
Well, I think we help them. In some cases, they may need our assistance directly. In some cases, it's just a little bit of rounding off the edges, right? They have the general idea properly. But I do think there's a lot of organizations that want to make the change and they just don't truly understand what that means.
Oh yeah.
And we can clarify that for them and say, are you willing to make that investment? Do you really want to make all those changes? If not, come up with another business because your value the value of your company is going to go down and down and down and down and down.
Yeah. Okay, so looking ahead, right? So 2026, we are seeing this transformation as we were talking before. The transformation is kind of going faster and faster with new things, new solutions coming up every day. It's important that leaders have a clear understanding of what is trending, what actually come to stay. But when you look ahead, what will kind of separate the BPOs providers that thrive and those that is struggle in your opinion?
In my opinion, the BPOs that focus, uh, the generalist BPO is the BPO that I see is most at risk because you don't have any specific vertical knowledge. So you can't be a consultant to someone if you don't understand their industry. And so the BPOs that verticalize, that decide there are certain markets that they're going to go after, and have a depth of understanding of those markets, so they provide premium service, which commands premium dollar, are the ones that are going to have the most success. Um, the generalist is really going to have a hard time, because think about what we were talking about before. It's hard to sit in that consultancy seat if you don't have vertical expertise about who you're talking to.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
right? And
Yes.
so you're throwing out generalist messages. You know, we have a site in Philippines and we have a site in India, and so we can do it for $9, and we can do it for, they only can do it for $12. And if you look exactly the same, I don't know about you, but if they had a Mercedes that looked the same, as it was exactly the same car as the real Mercedes that was $50,000 cheaper, I'm buying the $50,000 cheaper one,
Of
right?
course.
I'm not looking at anything else other than that. And so it's hard to differentiate yourself when you're a generalist. And I think that's the piece of the market that's most at risk. I think verticalization is where you need to be focused.
I love it, especially because it kind of aligns with what we were discussing in the beginning of this episode, um, which is if you want to kind of move away from being seen as a cost solution, cost efficiency solution, you need to bring value to the table. How do you bring value to the table? By verticalizing. That's when you're going to acquire deeper knowledge of that industry. And instead of sitting at the table just to discuss efficiency, you're going to become the real partner that will provide solutions. Not
Right.
all of them will be eaten by your client, but you're going to become that business partner, the real
Right.
business partner that is
Yes,
not
yes.
limited to cost efficiency
Yes.
conversations.
Right, right. And I don't want to extend this too much, but I have an example I was thinking about last night, thinking about today. I worked for a company in the artificial intelligence world 10 years ago, so it was really early. But I remember working with Blue Cross Blue Shield, major insurance company, right? And the CEO liked our technology. It was new at the time, and it was when Obamacare was coming on the market, the Affordable Care Act. So there was going to be a lot of people who were buying insurance for the first time. So the CEO and I met, and he said, I really don't want to spend, I don't want to increase my call center staff 10 times in order to handle calls where I'm not even sure if they're going to buy from me. So it was this big strategic decision that the organization was making. So there were meetings after meetings about how to implement the software, what we should talk about, what the requirements was. Bottom line, who wasn't in the room and I didn't even know was part of the solution? The contact center, where they had over 5,000 agents. And it
Wow.
never, they weren't in the room. They never, we never talked about it. I didn't even realize they had it until the CEO and the head of sales said to me, "Oh, you should probably train our agents how to use your AI solution." That was the first time I even knew a call center was involved. And I think about
Interesting.
that, right? So you
Yeah,
got 10,000 agents.
it's a
And you're
lot.
talking about, right, and you're talking about how to restructure to overcome this strategic problem that you see coming, and they weren't even in the room. I didn't even know they existed
Wow.
until at the end of the program. So I was just thinking about our conversation today, and I'm thinking, what a perfect example of what we're
Absolutely.
talking about here, right? How could they not have been at that table? How could the call center not be in that table, right? To say, hey, what? I can tell you what, I'll charge you $1 an hour for the agents that are just doing it. Just come up with a operational solution that you could do to help the customer. They didn't even know the problem existed. So
Absolutely.
that's the kind
What a
of
great
thing that we're
example.
talking, you know?
Yeah, and what a great example from 10 years ago. This is a kind of this is important to show that once again, your providers, your suppliers, they can help you be more
Right.
successful as long as you invite them to the table.
Yes. Yes, yes, and they give you a reason to invite them to the table, right? So what
Absolutely.
what I said to the call center, having worked in the call center industry before, is I said, okay, so somebody at that company that you're working with really dropped the ball. It was one of the big ones. And rather than say, hey, we know this is coming up, we know what we do for them, I bet you they're trying to figure out how to handle this problem that's coming, because if they were in that vertical, they would have known that's an issue that they were looking for. They would have proactively gone to their customer and said, we know this problem's coming up. How are you handling it? We have some ideas. That's all
Yeah.
it takes. And
Yeah,
that's where the
absolutely.
vertical, right? And that's the vertical thing that we're talking about, understanding your markets so that you know
Absolutely.
when those touch points come.
BPOs 2026 and beyond. You gotta verticalize. That's the
Yes, yes,
that's
yes,
the
yes,
recommendation here.
yeah.
Paul, you won't believe me, but we are approaching the end. This was such a
Oh,
great conversation. I learned a lot from you, and I'm pretty sure that the audience did as well. We have many people engaging here, and I thank them very much. But I'm sure this was just the tip of the iceberg of what we can learn from you. So, what is the best way to engage with you? What is the best way to find you? And what are the projects that you have in flight for 2026?
okay, so the best way to find me is Paul at coingrowthadvisors.com. I would say go to LinkedIn, but finding Paul Smith on LinkedIn is like a 2 day. You need Claude to help you find me. Um, uh, One of the projects we're working on now that's really interesting is um, it's a very established $135 million BPO, um, but they want to be forward thinking, and they've been in business for 20 years, so they have a lot of um, old BPO mentality. Um, and so we're helping them really restructure everything. Um, we're doing initial sales training. They're hiring new salespeople who have a different kind of background. And
Wow.
so we're training them on basic sales skills just to make sure that everyone's at the same level. Then we're doing some specific BPO, new version BPO training. So, how do you talk about technology and humans together? um, what is the collateral that you need to have? How do you do a demonstration of it? um, how do you roll that out? How does that impact your website? How does that impact the account management team and them understanding what's going on with the sales team? So we're helping make sure that that connection is there. um, and then at the end of that, we're going to be doing some more stuff for them, but that's a project that we're involved in right now. Another one that
Amazing.
we're doing is we have restructured the QBR. Um, the QBR for BBOs has traditionally been a metric dump. Like, here's every metric. And we're helping another company restructure that so that it's more strategic, where they're presenting metrics that matter. So
Wow.
not average hold time, but what is the if you're going to present that, what is the value that that has to the customer? What's the result that they got as a result of that? What's your strategic roadmap look for like? So what are you going to be doing as you go forward, and then how does that impact the customer that you're talking to? The
Amazing.
idea being, make it more strategic conversation. You have executives in the room, take advantage of that time, and the last thing they want to see is, that Joe was out last week because his daughter was sick. I mean, that
Yeah.
it's nice to know, but it has no business value. So those are a couple of the projects that we're working on right now. um,
Amazing project.
yeah, yeah, it's challenging. Redoing an organization is and getting people to think differently is difficult, but luckily in this case we have the whole team support. They know the change needs to happen, and
Oh,
they're happy to have us help them facilitate.
huge difference when you have the organization support, when they understand the why and they go along, right? That's
Yes,
exactly
yes,
what we were
yeah,
talking before.
yeah. Yeah, and working with the CEO helps to get the message. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Paul,
yeah.
I want to thank you very much for taking the time to be with us here, for sharing all of your insights and inspiring this audience. This is Limitless Talks. It was a pleasure talking to you today. And for our audience, stay tuned. We're going to be back next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Camilla.